You are listening to a Raptors podcast, the place every week for all things Raptors. Get ready and never underestimate the heart of a champion. Welcome back to a Raptors podcast. I'm your host as always, Lucky Roberts. And just before we dive in to the game today, I just want to quickly, mention a quick disclaimer to anybody listening in at home. If you have seen this game and you are seeking, some medical help, please do go seek a medical professional. Nobody should be subject to that kind of pain and distraught unless you're a Pistons fan, because they're used to it. So please do, seek help if you need it, because we're here for you, and nobody should really have to go through that. It's a tragedy what happened today. But I will be, going through the game just to maybe recap some of the history behind it and what happened and so on, as the Raptors fall to 12-20 after what was probably the worst game I've seen all season. That's pretty much an understatement. The Raptors just fell to the Detroit Pistons 129-127 in a game that the Raptors didn't look like they wanted to play in after some big news heard earlier today with OG Anunoby being shipped out to New York. Two new faces coming back with a pick on the way as well. I'll get into that a bit later. First, the game, I think, takes precedence, which is the one time I think I may say that when it's not playoffs, when, there wouldn't be any trade news, but, other news, retirements, whatever, what have you. I'm not here to talk about that. The Raptors, I don't really care what their stats were. Pascal Siakam, I think, had a pretty good game, and he brought some energy throughout. But there's no reason why we should be keeping up with the Pistons throughout any part of this game. And they didn't seem like they wanted to be in it. And the first half was a complete opposite to the second half. The first half was a very low-scoring affair, with Detroit taking a big lead after, outscoring the Raptors by 7 in the second quarter. And you sort of have these flashbacks into, I guess, future flashes, if that makes any sense, into the future where you can feel it in your gut and the horror that's about to occur. And I'm sure, Celtics fans had this. Brooklyn had a bit of a scare against the Pistons. And you can just feel it in your gut. And sometimes, your team is just going to lose. And, you hear it all over Twitter. What if the Raptors lose today? Or you hear it in your group chats. What if the Raptors lose today? And you think, man, that's not going to happen. There's no possibility of that occurring. And then you start to believe a little, even though, it's not even consciously, subconsciously you're believing it. And you can feel that build in your gut. And as the Raptors go down by 8 after the first half, you can feel it in your gut build a bit more. And as the Raptors hang around, get back into the game in the third, and you can feel it build in your gut even more. And then in the fourth, when they go down by double digits, it's released in this anger and sadness just by seeing Gary Trent lose a loose ball to Killian Hayes. Killian Hayes, the biggest bust I've seen in a while. Killian Hayes is not a good basketball player. He's dribbling so slowly. He's dribbling like he's me out there. I'm a good basketball player, but I'm not an NBA prospect. And, he's out hustling Gary Trent Jr. And you have every reason to want to win this basketball game, because you're hearing it now and you're seeing it now. I'm sure Raptors fans are going to be all over Twitter. I'm recording this right after the game. I'm sure they're not going to be the only ones all over Twitter. And there's going to be, a massacre of the Raptors after losing to the Detroit Pistons. A Detroit Pistons team who is so bad, an announcer, I forget his name, which is pretty ironic, couldn't name a player outside of Cade Cunningham on the team. It's like that serious. They are so bad, and Cade Cunningham had 30 points after getting injured in this one. He had a great game. Bogdanovic had a great game. I think this is the first positive game I've seen out of Kevin Knox's career. Alex Burks, I could say the same thing. And the Raptors, you look at their box score, and it seems pretty positive. Siakam, 35 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. He actually played pretty well today. 5 for 8 from free throw, but that's sort of what you expect. Scotty Barnes, 22, 9 and 2 steals and a block. Another, that's an average Scotty performance. That's what you expect from every night, and he brought that. But it's just the team you're playing against and the way that they were acting all game, you could tell they were not taking it seriously. And they were waiting for these two new players to come in. Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett are not going to save this basketball team if we're losing to the Detroit Pistons, who are 3-29, the worst basketball team in the history of the NBA, longest losing streak. And we're losing to them. And it just shows not only to them what team they're coming to, but what we're willing to accept as our team and what we're willing to continue to have as our culture. This is disgusting. I don't care who's playing. We should not be losing to the Detroit Pistons. I don't care that we only had 10 active players, 10 dressed players. We should not be losing to this team. Thad Young's getting minutes. Chris was getting minutes for the first time in his, this season. And he played well because he brought the energy. You're going to look at -9 in the box score and you're going to say, well, how good was he? He brought energy and he was hitting his buckets. And, it coincided with the Raptors losing it, and their bench was the reason they probably lost this game, as the Detroit Pistons completely outscored them on that facet. But it doesn't matter. Jakob Poeltl with a very promising start. He gets 14 rebounds. You cannot see him other than gobbling up rebounds. Nothing on the offensive side of the ball. He continues to not pass the ball and move it in a way that the modern center needs to. And sure, we have lots of passing pluses across our lineup, but it's still really not fun to look at. And he was good defensively. He had 3 blocks, but it's just so disappointing. And that's the root of it, man. I'm fine. I'm going to be fine tomorrow. I'm going to wake up and be fine. But it's just how far we've fallen and just how much hope and potential that this team really had. And they're showing us their true colors. And, this is going to be not only a dark night for the Raptors, but Darko's career as well. Because no highly thinking of coach of themselves is going to be sitting back and looking at that game and saying, I can be proud of that, and I did all I could. And I know it's the second day, back-to-back. Fair enough. Not fair enough. Work harder, guys. Jesus Christ. And once again, you're looking at the box score. Dennis Schroeder, I think, had a good game. Him and Pascal, good games. Everybody else, not good enough. Scotty Barnes did not come alive. He came alive way too late, as he always does. Dennis Schroeder, he came alive late, but he was on time. He was hitting his threes, keeping the Raptors within touching distance, but we were too far gone at that point. But he was hitting threes, hitting free throws, hitting field goals, getting into the paint, 9 assists, 1 turnover. He was good. Gary Trent Jr., I thought it was really good on the defensive end of the ball. But then again, who are we playing? And you're like, oh, yeah, I would have 4 steals and a block in this game if I was playing the Detroit Pistons. They're just not that good. And they're loose with their dribbles. They got turnovers all over the place. Bogdan with 4. And so Killian Hayes with 3. I mean, that's expected. Killian goddamn Hayes. He's playing 10 minutes for this team. Killian Hayes is a bench player for the Pistons. And we're losing to them. And mathematically, you're going to say, that's how it's going to work out. They got to beat somebody. But they don't got to beat us. And this isn't a mathematical game. This is a game of effort, and this is a game of passion. And the Raptors didn't have it tonight. Not until it was far too late. Not until, we're wasting the next 5 minutes of my life trying to come back from down 10 with half a minute left in the game. We're not serious. And I don't care who's coming off the bench. I don't care who's out. This is not serious. Please, changes need to be made. And I'm not saying the usual changes need to be made, but they need to be made in the effort level of this team outside of Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam on a day-to-day basis, because once again, it's not enough. Not nearly enough. And I'm going to be continuing to drill that in to anybody and everybody. What a disappointing game. I don't even want to look at the box score, look at anything surrounding it. It's just disgusting to me. Once again, Duren, 17 rebounds. Poeltl's letting Duren get 17 rebounds on him. He had 14 himself. These guys are piling up rebounds because they were piling up bricks. Anyway, I think I've got enough energy out after that, and I'm ready to talk about the OG Anunoby trade for Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett. RJ Barrett, obviously the first thing you're going to think of, he's coming back home, and I think he is. And I am skeptical to think if that's going to actually have a change in his performance, because over the past 4 years, 5 years, his career, he's been basically the same player. He's had a couple jumps in points per game, and maybe you could say a jump in consistency. He's very inconsistent still, but I think that he's the player that you're going to get. And he's 33% from three. He's putting up 18 points a game. He's not really doing too much of anything else. He's a decent defender. He's a decent passer. He's a decent rebounder, but he's decent. He's replacement level. But he's coming home, and he's going to be a fan favorite from the start. I know he wasn't the biggest fan favorite in New York, but I think Canadian fans will especially be able to look past that and attach to him as they have other past Canadian players. Emmanuel Quickley, from all accounts, is a really great pickup for the Raptors, a team that needed point guard depth, especially with Malachi Flynn leaving the fold, going to New York. He's going to be a really great addition. And you see all over Twitter, he's going to be a great pick and roll player with Scotty Barnes. They match each other's play styles perfectly. And I'm not going to lie to you, I haven't seen too much of Emmanuel Quickley's game. I'm mostly stick to watching Raptors and, a little bits and pieces. But hearing that is something you love to hear. And he seems like, looking at the stats, he's a really good three-point shooter, and he's going to be able to stretch the floor, and he's one of the best six men. He's going to come off the bench for us. People are saying, well, maybe he should be starting, and I don't disagree, because one of my main criticisms of the Raptors so far this season is their insistence to have Dennis Schroeder playing in these games and playing a big role, handling the ball and so on. He's, a focus player when he doesn't really need to be. And so it'll be interesting, to see it with a new point guard, because I don't think Malachi Flynn was really changing anything. And I think, to a certain extent, the Raptors were playing Precious Achiuwa and playing Malachi Flynn, big minutes, big roles, bigger roles, I guess, not big, because they wanted to build their value up, because they knew they weren't staying, and they knew, they might be able to fleece a team, like Twitter says, that the Pistons, Jesus Christ, that New York were fleeced. And so I'm, once again, a little skeptical to see how we are fleeced. I know we didn't want to pay OG, and they didn't want to pay Emmanuel Quickley, so it'll come back both ways, works out for both sides, and we get that pick as well, which I think is huge, because people, wanted picks, because this team isn't good, and we want to rebuild, start from the bottom, and this is sort of an accelerated idea. Maybe we can develop these guys, maybe we won't, like we didn't develop Gary, right? Who knows? And that's why it's, it can go south. Even though it looks on paper like a huge win for the Raptors, just value-wise, as we needed a six-man, we needed more depth on our bench, as you can see illustrated by today's game. We needed more depth on our bench. We needed some more shooting, which is what we got. I know we're losing our best shooter, but I will not talk about that. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not it really does live up to the hype. But I think, RJ coming back, that's a great story. I think he's going to be a good Raptor and an even better fan favorite. And Emmanuel Quickley, I do think, is going to blossom with a lot more opportunity here in Toronto. So I think it'll be interesting to see him develop as time goes on, even though he is older than RJ. And they sort of fit Scotty's timeline a lot better. RJ also has a pretty big contract, which is something that you have to keep in mind. But losing OG, we're losing a defender, a great defender. I argue one of the best three, one of the best one in the league. And he was sorely missed today. And you can see it. And obviously, if we have Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett in today's game, we're not losing. But once again, you can't make any excuses. That's just how it's going to go. And I'm going to miss OG. He has had some great moments, but at the end of the day, it was time to move on. And there's some other players on this Raptors team. I think at the end of the day, it's time to move on. And I will always thank OG for the service he's done for the Raptors. And I, applaud him to do great things in New York and for the rest of his career. And I will surely be cheering him on. And another player that I have not yet to talk about is Precious Achiuwa. I guess I mentioned him briefly, passingly, but he's been fine as a Raptor. He's shown spurts, as I've been talking about all over this podcast. He's shown these glimpses of what he can be, but it just never seems to connect with him, and consistency really, really is his issue. You can see him making bad reads defensively, bad reads offensively, and then sometimes you see him dunking from what seems to be the free throw line and shooting threes and knocking them down. And he's not playing with that joy that we saw in his first season when he had that great stretch going into the playoffs and in the playoffs against the 76ers. And we haven't really seen it, and I think it was time to move on. Especially, I feel like that he was a value booster in this package for, RJ and Emmanuel Quickley in that second round pick. I think he was a value enhancer, and I'm sad to see him go, but not as sad as really, I think people usually are when they lose a player. I mean, I'm mostly indifferent, a little sad. Anyway, that's sort of what I will talk about for now. I do want to mention the other games this week because that's sort of what this podcast is, but there was just two huge big pieces of information dropped today, and so most of this podcast will be centered around that. But I'll quickly go over the other games this week, and I'll have you guys on your way to forget about whatever just happened tonight. Anyway, I am back and here to talk about 3 games for you here. The first one that happened in the course of time and events was against the Utah Jazz. This game happened last Saturday, about a week ago, and the Raptors lost it. And the Utah Jazz are a very similar team to the Raptors. I mean, at the time, they were 12-18 and we were 11-18. So, not only just in my opinion, but also in record. And they're a team that's built around a power forward is too unfit to be a number one option in Lauri Markkanen. And they have some nice players, John Collins, Colin Sexton, Walker Kessler, who hasn't really had the same hype as he did last year, and Jordan Clarkson as well coming off that bench. He had 30 in this one, dominated, splashing threes as he does sometimes. He was plus 19 in this game, and that bench once again was the difference in this game, and it was a huge turnaround in the fourth, which really was the onslaught and the pour on. An onslaught from Markkanen, an onslaught from Clarkson, and they were able to push themselves past the Raptors with that flurry, winning the fourth by 20 points. And, you look at the bench, Gary Trent, minus 10. Chris Boucher, minus 10 plus minus. Nobody coming off the bench. Achiuwa and Flynn, who are, not on the team anymore for reasons only pertaining to skill, also in the negatives. And you can say Boucher had a decent game. Gary Trent had a decent game. He had 16. Scotty Barnes was basically the offense in this game. And there's 19 from OG, 19 from Pascal. They, took a back seat as Scotty really, really flourished in this one with 32, 14, and 7. 4 turnovers, but it's going to happen when you're, playing as hard and as you do. And Scotty Barnes hit 4 threes in this one. And I keep looking at one player in particular, 2 players in particular, and I'm going to keep hammering him home. Jakob Poeltl and Dennis Schroeder. Jakob Poeltl with 2 points in this game. Not nearly enough. With 4 rebounds. Not nearly enough. And you can say all you want about the Jazz not really having a big starting center, starting Kelly Olynyk basically in that role. They have Walker Kessler off the bench. The Raptors don't have a big center. Jakob Poeltl needs to be dominating that matchup if he's starting and if he's playing 21 minutes. I don't care if, we're running smaller lineups. He still played 21 minutes. Getting 4 rebounds is not sufficient. And Jakob Poeltl scoring 2 points is not sufficient when you have Kelly Olynyk in the paint there. And, Dennis Schroeder, who had 4 turnovers in this one. And you can say, but he was also handling the ball as much as Scotty was. And you can say, look, he also had 7 assists like Scotty did. But he's also not putting up nearly the amount of point production that Scotty was and did. and he's passing it and he's turning it over and he's taking shots when it should be Scotty's ball, and he's just taking the ball away from our best player. And, as I talk about this next game, the Wizards, there was a change made. And it's, one that's not really going to be to his benefit. Scotty Barnes, move him to point forward. And it instantly made an impact. Raptors dominate the Wizards. I know it's the Wizards, which are basically the senior team to the junior team of the Pistons. They're 5-25, but Scotty Barnes started playing point forward, and moving to the bench was Dennis Schroeder, where he can play off the bench, and he was a plus 29 in this one, and he can run the second unit, which I think we're going to see Emmanuel quickly do, and it was to the benefit of the Raptors as a whole. Everybody got touches. Podol was playing better. 10 points, 10 rebounds. Gary Trent was playing better. He moved to the starting lineup. He's plus 8 in this game. Hit 3 threes. OG really, really was the best player in this one. Plus 24, 26 points. He's, cutting, doing these alley-oops that we saw the last 2 games against the Celtics and against the Wizards, where he's doing a backcourt cut, and everybody's so focused on either Pascal or either Scotty, mainly when Scotty's dribbling it. He sneaks behind Scotty with a nice alley-oop, and OG really thrived off that, and he scored 26 in this one, and against the Celtics, he had a similar quick start, supplementing his three-point shooting with a little bit of dunking with there, and he doesn't have to dribble, which is his main issue over the years, is his balance, his attack balance, and these turnovers and his passing. But how is he going to score without that? Well, obviously he's going to catch and shoot threes, and he's a great shooter from there. And we tried a couple seasons ago to get him active from mid-range with these sidestep mid-range shot that Gary always hits. That wasn't working either. We tried to get him to the rim. That wasn't working. He couldn't keep his balance. So these alley-oops were really the next big thing, the next revelation that we can supplement his production here, where it's not just steals and breakaways, and it's not just three-pointers. Now he can really put some pressure on the rim in the half court. But it was short-lived, only 2 games, one against the Wizards and obviously one against the Celtics. The game against the Wizards, Raptors defense shut them down. They only scored 102, very reminiscent of an early season game that the Raptors would have, where their defense would show up, but their offense wouldn't. But this time, their offense did. Great ball movement all across the court. Pascal Siakam with 11 assists, Scotty Barnes with 8 assists. It was sort of split between the two of them. The dribbling roll. That's so stupid. Anyway. And we see lots of guys get off the bench and have some great performances and productive performances. And I know it's the Wizards, but this is the type of game you want to see against a team as bad as the Wizards. And I don't want to talk about the Pistons game much longer because it is not good for my health, but it showed a difference, I'll say, not having OG in the lineup and not having that extra element to it. And finally, the final game I'm going to be talking about before I set you guys on your way. Unfortunately, this week there's going to be no wrap-up around the league. There was just too many things to cover this week. And, I got to get back to my holidaying. Anyway, the Raptors playing a team in the Celtics without, Jason Tatum, one of the best players in the league, stuck in it. And it was a big fourth quarter push that brought him into it. After suffering a bit of a loss because of a fourth quarter push to another team, they sort of recovered and got one of their own. Scotty Barnes with another harrowing performance in that point guard role, and you saw him take a step back when he was outside of it this game. But he had 30 and 10 and 5 assists, and he had 7 threes, which I'm pretty sure is a, career high for Scotty Barnes, and he had 30 in this one, and he once again was feeding the rock to everybody. Pascal Siakam as well had 5 assists, 27 points. Pascal Siakam has really been turning it on of late, getting in the paint with his moves, and he's once again still consistent from 3. He hit 2 threes in this one, and he's recovering sort of that 3-point barrage he had after the championship season. And off the bench, Schroeder once again was a positive player. And they didn't put it all together against the Celtics, who are one of the best teams in the league, even without Jason Tatum. And it was Luke Cornett, who I don't know how he did that. He has 9 for 11. He's really moving the ball. I would like to see the way Jakob Poeltl move the ball, who, once again, you can argue he had a bounce-back game in this one. I don't really think so, but you see in Luke Cornett exactly what you want to see in Jakob Poeltl with his passing, because he was setting it up. He was making reads on the down defenders, and he had 20 points in this one because of it. He was moving the ball, 3 assists as well, 8 rebounds. Really much more of a complete player than Jakob Poeltl, who is mainly a screen and roll, grab a rebound type guy. And obviously Jaylen Brown is there, and he's going to put a lot of stuff in. Derek White, sure, he has a full box score, 3 steals, 2 blocks. He was not really efficient in this one. He was perfect from the free throw line, and that was what got them across the line in this one against the Raptors in that fourth quarter, where the Raptors came alive. But it was all for naught. And Sam Hauser, Holiday, who's had a okay game, his defense really is what he's leaning on towards the end of his career. He played decently as well, 15 points, a big plus-minus score. And Jaylen Brown and their guards, Derek White, were able to hold on to this one and take it away from the Raptors, who are doing a great job of tanking of recently. But it is frustrating, I think, a lot of fans. But that's going to leave it here today for a Raptors podcast. As always, I'm your host, Lucky Roberts. Follow me on Twitter. Do what you want. But what I do want you to do, I hope you do, is take a break, enjoy your life, come back to the Raptors with an open heart, open mind. Forget that today even happened outside of the trade. And we'll be seeing our new players soon. So I'll be back with you after that, and I'm sure there'll be a lot to talk about. So anyway, thanks for listening, and bye.